Singer-songwriters have been telling stories for centuries, and we've seen this amazing evolutionary process, whereas singer-songwriters have come from someone who used to stand on a street corner or, stand at parties and sing about social issues or history or politics, to someone that would stand on stage with an acoustic guitar or a piano and use this instrument to accompany the stories that they're portraying to an audience. Now, along this evolutionary process, of course, we've seen the addition of chords and harmonic content. And chords have become a really important part of the singer-songwriter process, almost to the point where they're equally as important as a melody because it sets the tone, it sets the stage or the environment for this story. And we've come to have these really fascinating associations with different chord progressions. Even if you know nothing about chords, you will still relate to certain chord progressions because you've heard them over and over again in so many hit songs. In this video series, we're going to look at why the digital audio workstation, otherwise known as a DAW, has become one of the most important components in songwriting and music production. We're going to take a look at how the DAW has completely revolutionized the way that singer-songwriters approach writing and recording music, and of course, telling their stories. I'm going to show you one of the processes that I use for writing music inside a DAW, and I like to call it 4 chords and the loop. And that's because I take 4 chords and I set up a loop or a cycle record inside of Cubase, and I just let that cycle over and over again. And I go from track to track using instrument to instrument to come up with some sort of musical and production platform for the song that I'm writing. The first exercise is to take something like this, and this is a simple 4 chord progression. This whole song that I'm going to be writing in this series is very, very simple. So I've got this progression. And that's the vocal. I'm thinking I'm doing a really bad job of humming it, but I'll always be humming something really out of tune whilst I'm playing a chord progression to try and get an idea of what's going to fit. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to start to use some of the instruments around me in this awesome creative space. And I'm not going to play them as hard as I can. What I want to do is try and play them as simply as possible. So rather than playing full chords and strumming and hitting the drums hard and playing a lot of stuff, I want each instrument or each texture to be a layer. So I'm going to start with a layer, probably drums or percussion or something like that. And then I'm going to start building using maybe guitars, maybe the Rhodes, maybe bass. We'll see what happens. So I want you to try and think about doing that in your own space, even if it's a tambourine, if it's a hand clap, if it's a beatbox, it doesn't matter. Start thinking about how you can put this away, put the guitar away for a moment, and start looking into the DAW using your software instruments and using these instruments that are around you in your own creative space. You don't need to be recording in a studio. You can do this at home. I love going from track to track, adding layer upon layer of groove and colour. There's nothing more creatively satisfying. And now if I go into Cubase, I can look at everything that I've recorded. So on the drum track, I've recorded 4 different track versions of groove, and you can see that on the left-hand side under track versions. But I'm just getting this one bar, which I absolutely love the feel of. And I've cut it out, and I'm just dragging it to the start of my project. And I'm just going to slot it in here on the first bar of my intro, and then pick up on this handle and copy and paste it for 7 bars. And then I'm going to leave the 8th bar free. And I'm going to do the same for the next section, which is verse 1. So now I can try this 1 bar groove, which is basically trying the live drum feel over the top of my track to see how it works. Now there's only a kick and a snare mono channel and an overhead stereo channel, and I've got them all in a track folder, and I'm using group editing, so whatever I do to one track, it's impacting all of them in exactly the same manner. I love this drum part, but it doesn't have the dynamic flow that I'm after for the first verse, so I'm just muting them so that they don't kick in there. I'm copying and pasting them over to the second verse right here, and now I'm unmuting it. And I feel that it has more dynamic impact being left out of the first verse and coming in for the second verse.
I just wanna make it out alive.
Already you can see that I'm starting to shape the groove and the dynamics behind this scratch vocal that I've created. I've done exactly the same with the electric drums that I did with the acoustic drums. I've chopped them up into small bars, segments, which I'm just copying and pasting. And now I'm just listening even further to try and get them to complement the acoustic drums and vice versa. Now, I often find when I'm going through this process that less is better or less is more. So in this case, I'm simplifying the kick drum so that the electronic kick drum is not syncopated and it sits on 1 and 3 with the acoustic drum kit. Now, I'm not a great drummer, so I've used an electric fill right here. And I think that's really effective. So it's working to your strengths. Don't do a massive drum fill if you can't do a massive drum fill. Find a really simple one, which is effective and leaves space, but still adds emphasis to say, hey, this is the end of my musical sentence right here.
You're always a victim.
It's kitschy, it's kooky, and it works. I'm quickly formulating a roadmap for this song and in turn the music production which is going to support this song, and I haven't necessarily done it in a linear fashion. I've started by recording loops. There's a lot more that I can do to these parts that I've recorded by using effects to add even more interest and colour. For example, on this intro pad, I've added the chopper effect. Now just have a listen to what this does over the top of this pad sound.
Step away.
See, this is songwriting at its finest because you just get to mess with the sound once you've actually laid it down. And I guess the only disappointing thing is having to use less of it because it's too over the top for the track. Now let's go and have a look at the auto pan plugin. And this is what's causing that synth, or the pad, to move from left to right in your headphones right now. I called this exercise 4 chords in the loop about 9 minutes ago, and I'm still cycling over the same 4-bar phrase, and it doesn't get any less fun because it's such an amazing creative challenge to come up with something so simple, to be creative in terms of creating all of the different parts and the layers, and now to access all of the functionality inside of the DAW to add things like effects over the top, which control panning and envelope. And this creates interesting movement, not just from left to right, but even from note to note and from chord to chord. What we're actually doing is starting to mix our song right here at the very beginning or the start of the process. And that is the awesome thing about songwriting in this manner. big part of the mixing process is actually removing things that aren't really contributing to the overall production. And I've just knocked off the first couple of notes of the piano phrase to allow the bass to come through. The other thing I'm not doing is putting this piano octave on every second note the whole way through the intro. I'm just bringing it in at the end to add emphasis. You can also start to add color over the top of the instruments that you've recorded, like the bass guitar, for example. So I can add distortion, and rather than making the part louder, the distortion can sometimes help things like a bass guitar to actually stand out in the mix. Once again, it's really important to control the volume so that you're not just making it louder and dirtier. There are so many great tools that you can use in Cubase to continue to further shape your sound. Now, whilst I had that bass part soloed, I noticed that it was a little bit out of time and it just needs a little bit of love with regard to, well, timing. So I want to show you the coolest trick to moving your audio recordings into time super fast. I could just audio quantize the bass, but sometimes with the bass it's nice to have a little bit of lag in some of the notes. It's what gives us the groove. I've double clicked on the event and I'm clicking on the audio warp tab and now the free warp icon. Now I've got this tool down the bottom and I need to make sure that I click on the previous note before I edit the note that I need to edit. So I'm just going to click here on the end of the previous note and now I can pick up on the start of the note that I want to edit and move it. Look what happens if I don't put a marker at the end of the previous note. You can see everything beforehand is moving. So I can easily fix that just by clicking on the start of this note and then moving to the start of the second note in this bar and just dragging it to the right. And that is perfect. Now this tool is perfect for this whole loop record business. So you can loop your bass, you can choose your bass part, and then you just simply go in and in a matter of seconds, just tighten up the playing so that it's spot on. And this is awesome for people like me that don't play the bass or don't really play the guitar. And this is why you don't need to be an absolute legend at every instrument to record like this. You've got the tools in the door. And this is what I was saying before. Now, doors allow us to do things that weren't humanly possible for me, or maybe for you, and that includes playing like a virtuoso. Now we've turned 4 chords into a musical loop, we've got this musical foundation which is going to become the building blocks for this song that throughout this series we're not just writing, we're also producing and mixing. Coming up in the very next video, we're going to take these musical ideas in terms of the 4 chords and the loops, and we're going to start building our song structure. And we're also going to look at some really cool functionality inside the DAW, which means that we can start organizing and managing our song structure from the very moment we start writing our song. Hey, thanks for taking the time to stop by and check out this video. Give us the thumbs up if you've learned something, and subscribe to the Cubase YouTube channel for plenty more videos just like this. I'll see you there.